So I'm going to be talking about how permaculture farming can have a positive impact on our economy. Permaculture, a form of farming design, can serve as a great solution for a more sustainable way of farming. It begins with three simple ethics: care for the earth, care for people, and a design system that return their surplus back to the good of the earth and its people. Before we get into permaculture, I want to talk a little bit more about the progress of farming. So, farming was a direct cause of early civilization, which we generally say began about 12,000 years ago with the Neolithic Revolution, aka Agricultural Revolution. By taking advantage of the natural fertility of the land and with a small percentage of people able to grow the food of others, people could begin to specialize in different arts and crafts and could then also trade their services or goods with others. So, farming was a basis of economies for as long as we've had formal economies. But with the financial incentives to grow more food, and with the pressure from expanding populations, agriculture has been pushed to further extremes. We've discovered that initially plowing soil results in larger yields, but we've now found that it also destroys soil life and leads to erosion, which basically means the natural destruction of our soil. So, just to put it into perspective, we now move more topsoil by tons into the ocean than we export commercial goods like corn or soy products, which is crazy. We've also began clearing more forest to provide agricultural lands for the increasing populations, which further destabilizes complex ecological systems. So in the last 12,000 years, civilization has been turning fertile lands into deserts with extractive agriculture practice. So aside from giving us a lot of cool stuff, the power and pollution generated by the Industrial Revolution have made the last 200 years more destructive than any other period in human history. The problem with all of these systems was that they considered profit, or the bottom line, and planned for short-term gains in ways that violated nature. We have done this ourselves as well. For example, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, which is an area of land where vegetation has been lost and soil reduced to dust and erosion, especially as a consequence of drought or unsuitable farming practices. This was a direct consequence of bad agriculture practice, leading to massive soil erosion. As a matter of fact, this issue was so bad that Franklin D. Roosevelt presented a solution to reverse the depression by putting men to work stabilizing that landscape. So that's the problem. Our economic system is oversimplified. It is concerned only with profit and cannot account for the complex externalities paid by future generations. In fact, we cannot even calculate those externalities. So what does externalities mean? As Google likes to put it, it's a side effect or consequence of an industrial or commercial activity that affects other parties without this being reflected in the cost of the goods or services involved. For example, the pollination of surrounding crops by bees kept for honey. So like I mentioned in the beginning, permaculture has the three basic ethics: care for the earth, care for people, and a design system that returns the surplus back to the good of the earth and its people. Our current approach to food violates all three ethics. The average pound of food that travels 2,000 miles is significantly less nutritious than its original counterpart. It was probably processed by exploited labor, was grown in a way that damages the land, and costs as much as 1,000 the calories that it actually provides. So not to mention that there's a good chance it will end up in the garbage as unsellable or unused waste. This violates all of the ethics of permaculture. A permaculture approach would look for the maximum effect for the least use of energy. Every neighborhood and every home is responsible for producing more of its own food. Local economies emerge based on a real good versus global debt. So permaculture even advocates creating local currencies and systems where individuals can trade and barter locally without relying on unstable global currency. Um, because permaculture design is efficient, ethical, and aligned with the forces of nature, individual needs are greatly reduced. We currently work a lot in order to buy things that will likely have a short life of utility and then find its way into the waste stream. Permaculture seeks to design systems that put waste to use and to maximize utility. So ultimately, economics needs to be governed by the same laws of nature that govern all existence. And as we can see right now, they don't. Cheap energy and turning a blind eye to the future allows us to bend the limits of nature, of natural order. However, as we all know, it all comes with a high price. So that's the end of my talk. I hope that you learned something useful and found this information eye-opening. Thank you.